Good evening, everybody. Isn't it nice to be in a room full of people where you can say bitch and nobody thinks you're obscene language? I have to laugh. One of my good friends told me that she got a call not too long ago from her daughter's kindergarten teacher. And the kindergarten teacher said, we have a problem. In sharing today, Katie Jo was very inappropriate. And Robin said, well, what did she say? The teacher said, she said, you have too many bitches at your house and you're getting rid of some. Robin, unfortunately, had to give the kindergarten teacher a small education. One quick announcement. Health, as we all know in our breed, is very, very important. And so this week is an opportunity for you to do several things that involve the health of our beloved Newfoundlands. We hope that you'll visit the Health Information Center, the DNA clinic, and donate your dog's blood for health research. The grant provided by the NCA Charitable Trust, your health dollars, allow the OFA fees to be waived. That means it's free. It's like a free lunch. The clinic will run in the current pavilion from 9 to 5 on Thursday and Friday and 9 to noon on Saturday. So there's no excuse not to get this done. Surf clinic's also being held Friday at the Riverian Inn at the Tower entrance. Veterinary ophthalmologist Joshua Plateau will be doing the exams from 10 to 2. The cost is $33 cash or check payable to the NCA. Surf exams detect ocular diseases such as juvenile cataracts, progressive retinal atrophy. The exam should be done yearly on breeding stock. Pet dogs should be done every 2 to 3 years to detect early onset of problems that begin at 8 or 9. Dogs' eggs, well, their eyes are also dilated. So plan to keep them inside or in a vehicle for a few hours after the exam. Assistant area and coat color swabs will be available at the Health Expo DNA Clinic and Surf Clinic. These are cheek swabs. Return them to the DNA or Surf clinics with the required information and payment to get a home submission rate. There's also going to be a health challenge silence auction. And don't forget the Health Expo in the Rotary Building. It runs through Friday. Find health information and much, much more. At this time, I would like to introduce our new president, Patty Franklin.
I have to admit my primary allegiance is to the Breeders' Education Committee. I'm a member of the committee. And I want to encourage you very strongly to participate in our breed survey on screening practices, and the fate of dogs that screen as puppies differently. I think this is very important in terms of information that you would have as to what you should do with these puppies, should they be placed or whatever. If we know that mild SAS puppies live a equally long life as others and symptom-free life, that means that you may do something different, may make different decisions about them when they're young. The other thing that's frankly more important is that we hope this is the start of a way to really share information among the NCA breeders and do so in a completely non-judgmental way. That we've gone to great lengths to make submission of data and submission of data to future projects absolutely and completely confidential. It comes into the medical school where I'm employed. The data goes to one server, the email associated with that goes to another server, and I can't even get to the email. Only 2 people in the university have the code to get to that email, so it is completely, there's nobody associated with dogs whatsoever that will ever see those emails. You start with a randomized breeder code, and that's how we can communicate back with you automatically should we need to do so. So I encourage you to take a look at that. This first one actually is probably more than you want to deal with, but you will get there. Believe me, if you play with the software a little bit, it will become very easy. And we hope to follow that. Some things will be easier, some things may be more complicated, but it is absolutely worthwhile in terms of building a database of what we as Newfoundland breeders go through. Thank you.
Wait.
Pat, in appreciation for all you've done for the heart study, getting it together, making it wonderfully well-formed, and hours and hours and hours of work, your committee would like to present you with something.
Just stay to this side.
He wrote the whole program.
Not on the NCA list.
Not on the agenda, I promise. And also, you guys know Pat's our new president.
Oh. Fantastic. Martini said. Oh, no. It's even the right kind of gin. Thank you so much, you guys.
You got Allison removed in there, too. Party at Pat's.
Okay, again, welcome everybody. I didn't introduce myself before, but I'm Ron Horton. I'm owned by Lucy and Oliver and Nelson. They're very fantastic critters that live in our house, and we enjoy it a great deal. And they seem to be the absolute centers of our life, as I know almost every one of you have equally strong centers of your life. My partner, Fred Bach, is here tonight, and as we start into questions and answers, Fred will be there. Fred's done this job for the last couple of years, and they asked me to do it. I actually spent about a month trying to copy Fred's voice so that I too could sound like James Earl Jones, but after doing that for a month or so, I gave up and decided that I would just have to stick out as Ron Horton. I'd like to introduce our panel tonight. We're very fortunate. Betty McDonald, who the empty chair is there, will be here in a few minutes. But starting here, Robin Seaman on the end. Jose Jones. Megan Melvin. And Parsons. I told you she looked amazing like this woman that I met earlier today. I'm not sure that it's the same woman, but looked amazingly the same. Okay. So we have a few questions to start out with that people have passed in, and then we are going to move around the room and give every one of you the opportunity to ask the question that's been bothering you, that you would like to know how to improve your breeding practices, what goes on in your kennel, or just information that you may want to know about breeding dogs. I thought an interesting question that came up today was how much do you have involved before you ever know you're going to have dollars? How many dollars do you have involved before you ever know that you're going to have puppies on the ground? Stud feeds, progesterone tests, et cetera, all those things that go into it. Ultrasounds to say, oh my goodness, they're there! Anybody interested in dealing with that? What would a breeder expect when they begin to think about having puppies on the ground? Pardon? Monetarily, what would be the thought of how much they should plan on?
I'll take it for a minute, but I don't think that I ever think about that. I think more about what I'm doing for the breeding than what it's going to cost, and try to do the best one I can. It's expensive from the get-go. And I don't think you can put a dollar sign on it because things evolve like C-sections instead of just a normal whelping. You know, it's an expensive hobby and probably goes into the thousands before you ever get a puppy on the ground and before you ever get a puppy to sell, to make up some of that output that you have.
Rick, can you talk up a little bit why it's kind of difficult when are you back there?
I'll be like a rock star and just stick it right in my throat.
That works, Ron.
Pardon?
That works.
Oh, okay. Okay, I heard the word C-section, so one of the questions that came in, are breeders taking into consideration the human research which shows increased incidence of allergies and autoimmune diseases in children born by C-section? When do you want to do a planned C-section?
I have been doing more C-sections lately than in previous years. In the last few years, I've almost always done a C-section because I have trouble having a bed available on an emergency in the middle of the night for the whelping, and I don't want to go to an emergency clinic where somebody that might not even be good at C-sections is operating on my dog. So I tend to work with my vet and try and schedule them if he's going to be unavailable on a weekend or something like that. We use the progesterones to try and time a section. Personally, my kids are all full grown and I've never heard about allergies and autoimmune children because of C-section births. So I don't know anything about it. I personally don't have allergy histories in my dogs. I've not had problems with that. I've had a couple of autoimmunes over the years. I don't do shots anymore other than rabies after the puppies because of the autoimmune issue. I haven't done shots for years. But I've never heard of it being related to a C-section.
I've never heard of it before either. I couldn't even give you statistics on puppies because it just doesn't equate for me.
I don't know where this medical research came from. It's a little note here.
You know, even if it were proven, everything is a balance. You weigh the possible allergies in your puppies to get them. Right? So you have choices to make all the time.
I think what Sue said is very relevant as far as my practice here too. Doing the reverse progesterones to find out when they are going to have their puppies. My problem seems to be getting into Saturday night, then you're not going to, Saturday afternoon, you're not going to have a vet available Sunday, or it's a holiday, and their progesterones are low, and they're not doing anything. So, including they're still eating, so you have to weigh it. And certainly I would much rather have the confidence of my own vet than taking it to some emergency clinic where they could end up doing a section and then spaying her, as is common in some of the areas around where I live.
Okay, interesting question here. When do you give up on a bitch that does not take?
Probably never if she's really good. I have a history of beating my head against the wall. And once in a while, after, surprisingly, and Ann's had, I think Ann could speak to this, they get to kind of middle age and you've been trying and all of a sudden they have a normal sized litter for you, and why, I don't know.
It was your lucky day.
Yes.
Anybody else? Ann?
I don't know, I gave up with a lot more difficulty 20 years ago. I give up pretty easy now.
I second that. Much easier now.
Okay, let's go on. Dealing with hearts. You've gone to the cardiologist and they've listened to your puppy's heart and they've given you a report, either positive or negative. When do you think it's appropriate to go ahead and do a Doppler also?
Our cardiologist recommends checking between 9 and 10 weeks of age. If there is any audible murmur of any kind, he suggests we wait at least till 12 to 16 weeks to do a Doppler unless it's a really, really severe murmur, and then he does it right away.
My cardiologist is the same, does not recommend doing Dopplers when he hears sounds. At 9 weeks, he said they're not definitive. And he wants to see something.
First,
I was going to say my cardiologist is the same way, and I think all four of us use different cardiologists.
Yes.
then this person says, and I don't know if this person's a cardiologist or not, but if a Doppler is done twice or more than once on a dog, how reproducible are they? How accurate are they of getting the same results, or is it tend to be a one-time thing, then you get another result another time? I'm not sure I do either. But the question seems to be a reliability question regarding the Doppler. Is it a reliable test?
I think it's the best tool if you have a murmur to detect the disease of SAS or any kind of heart disease. We don't have anything better than that. So right now it's the gold standard.
I think repeating Dopplers in order to try and check out your results is just, I like, you know, at the cost, I just say, are you sure? And go from there.
Okay. I have a couple more here. This one, before breeding, do you culture the bitch? Do you culture the dog? Why? And why do you do it?
Culture the dog, you said too?
Yeah, dog and bitch. That's a good question.
On the stud dog, I check their semen. If the semen is good, there's no need to do a culture. If there are abnormalities past, say, 18% in the collection, then you would like to do a culture and sensitivity on it and see what you're dealing with. Or put them on doxycycline, Baytril, something like that that's broad spectrum that gets that area of the dog well for any type of infections or bacteria, whatever. On the brood bitch, I don't culture them at the get-go, but if there are problems in conceiving, then certainly you do a vaginal culture and treat as appropriately.
I think in years past, we had a long history of culturing everything. I'd say back in the 80s and stuff, and we were also doing a lot more natural breedings then, so we were concerned as to whether things could be being passed to the bitch from the dog and things like that. I think with the advent of the broad spectrum antibiotics now, I personally just bypass any cultures. I just put every bitch in season pretty much on Baytril or Cipro up until the time I breed her. I do all my breedings artificially. And I check the semen on the male every time I collect it before I put it into the bitch. So, and if I don't like the looks of it, it doesn't get put into the bitch. So, but paying for the cultures, I just really, we did that for years and ended up putting them on all these antibiotics. Now I just put them on the antibiotic. Try and save a little money.
Our final panelist, another lady who looks very familiar from being out in that green field today. Betty McDonald is here with us. Welcome, Betty. We're glad to have you. Okay. Those are the questions some of the questions that came in.
What is the amount of time that you?
Wait a minute, I have a job to do.
We have the man in the audience.
You cut me out and I don't get supper tonight. All right. Now, the rules are, I got to turn the microphone on. Check, that's not on.
Check, that's on. And I'm going to hand you the microphone. You got, look at me. You've got to speak right into it. And you've got, I want you to stand up and I want you to tell us what your name is, and if you have a kennel, tell us your kennel name. Then you can ask the question.
If I don't freak out beforehand. I'm Jenny Langville, and I have turf-tied Newfoundlands. How long do you put the bitch on Baytril or Cipro for prior to the breeding?
21 days.
21. Exactly.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Perfect. Now everybody else do it like her, okay? And I won't yell at you. All right.
Other questions?
Right here. Stand up. Come on, Sue.
I'm finishing her question. I'm Susan Wagner, Newfoundlands. My question would be 21 days from when?
When they come into season, and actually probably quit a couple of days past the time I breed them. And it usually comes out around 21 days.
I'm Joan Fisher. I'm not a breeder, but I've owned Newfoundland since 1977. And I'm just wondering, do you not have any concerns about overuse of antibiotics and how you're putting your dogs on probiotics after all of that antibiotic use?
I don't.
Push the button. Here.
Wolf.
I don't do what they do. I used to do what as far as that, unless I have a problem. So if I do miss a bitch, then I would start culturing and putting them on antibiotics. But
Stand.
I don't do it now. However, if I did, then I would definitely be giving puppies probiotics.
I would give it to the bitch also daily with the antibiotics. And seriously, you know, the vets lecture all the time on overusing antibiotics and this one and that one. And I have never, ever had any problems using antibiotics on the Newfoundland. Never. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And we've had a lot of Newfoundlands through the years, and I really think that if you do the right thing, we feed yogurt every morning also as a natural culture, and we do put them on a probiotic while they're on the antibiotics, and even overusing Baytril instead of changing an antibiotic, it just works. And it doesn't do anything to the dog, and our dogs live very long, healthy lives. If it's not broke, I'm not going to change it.
Fred?
I couldn't see it.
Hi, I'm Janet Cullen, Gold Coast, Newfoundland.
Oh.
Check drops. When would you use them? The good and bad, because I know they took them off the market for a while, now they're back on the market, or you could get them from a vet now. Why you would use them and when?
I've used check drops, and the reason I've used them when I've used them on bitches that are short cycling. And if they're constantly coming into heat, you're never going to get them pregnant. And I put them on check drops for about 6 months to keep them out of heat. And then I breed them on the first heat when they come in. And I've had some success with that. I don't necessarily get a huge litter the first time, but I usually get some puppies. But that's why I've used it. I think I don't hear a lot of use of it in this breed. I know other breeds use it quite a bit. The golden people use it constantly. But it's helped me that way, because I had several bitches that were short cycling and just couldn't seem to get them bred.
I used it only once and it wasn't successful because she came right in season anyway. So, and then I believe they told me a breeder, I
did, and I didn't get a litter, but I don't think I ever got a litter out of that bitch. And she did cycle right through it.
I had the same experience with the one time I tried it they came in season about a month after I put them on it. So I stopped. My vet did say there was some scientific studies where it did cause cancer in some dogs, and to me that's not worth it.
I had heard about them coming into season, but I also was told that they used to recommend you doing it every other day. If you put them on it every day, they don't come into season. And that Robin and I have, Robin uses more than I do because she lives near it, but reproductive vet up my way feels that a lot of times the check drops will help with cystic ovaries also.
Question?
Luann Leonard, Sun Valley, Newfoundlands. I'm going to ask a question from the other end. From the other end, have you ever had any bitches that never came in heat? I had a big doggy bitch for the first 2 years. She cycled quite normally. After that, she never came in heat anymore. She was trying to. I brought her once via surgical implant and didn't miss, or she missed, and she just never came into heat after that again.
How long now?
2.5 years. She has since been placed, and she's going to be spayed next month. So I want to make sure that they find anything unusual in there. But it's the first time I've ever come across anything like this. She just stopped having heat cycles. Thyroid was normal, but she was a big doggy bitch. No health problems, just didn't come in heat.
I have one that did that, but she's a Portuguese water dog.
Question in the back, Chris.
I don't see your hand.
Just walking towards you.
Oh. You're always standing.
Yeah. Hi, Lynn Anderson. When you breed a bitch, we hear that sometimes you can tell if they're pregnant. Sometimes you can tell if they're pregnant by them having a change in the discharge that they have. Have any of you noticed that? And what do you look for as signs that your bitches are pregnant, besides doing ultrasounds and things like that?
I can add a few things here. They won't leave you alone. Now, around 4 weeks, the last rib, the hair starts protruding directly out.
Ignore that.
I think around 4.5 weeks, there can be, not always, a very, very opaque discharge. It lasts a couple of days and then it goes away. At first you panic and think, oh my God, they're going into pio. But it's a very, very opaque discharge and a little stringy. And then it goes away, and usually they're pregnant if they show that particular sign. But I like to palpate them at about 28 days to be sure and to confirm the pregnancy.
Lots of times will get that little bit of discharge, and usually the vulva usually stays a little bigger after they're bred, doesn't go right back down to normal size. Sometimes they'll go off their food at about that 4-week mark, and then I panic because I figure either they're pregnant or they're going to pio. But once again, I try and palpate at the 4-week mark. Get some idea from my vet that way.
Mine usually don't go off their food at 4 weeks. I've had an occasional one do it. Usually they're ravenous, like after 2 or 3 weeks, just ravenous.
Just to add something, the good thing about confirming a pregnancy either through ultrasound or palpation is that if you have a miss and you've had an ultrasound that confirmed pregnancy, or you had a palpation that did, you know there's something else going on, and it's just another piece of information that you can work with the next time they come into season. So I think it's really important not to guess and say, oh, she's got bigger or she's got a little discharge, confirm the pregnancy, and that way you can really help yourself do something better the next time. If there's a reabsorption or something's going on, you know you need to check thyroids or something along the way.
Pam Rubio, Capriccia Farm. How many progesterone tests do you usually do and when do you start?
I think you should talk to Sue Jones about that. I think she had one time when she spent about $1,200.
I'm usually lucky, but I've had bitches that have really had no sign of being pregnant or being in season. I recently did breed a bitch that truly didn't seem, my young George didn't even know if she was in season or didn't care. But one day, some discharge, and after that, but the progesterone told the truth. And the first progesterone showed 2, so I was lucky because I only had to do 2. You know, it's a matter of what you're trying to not put yourself in the hole financially, but you really want to find out when it's 2. Peggy, didn't you have one that ovulated when it was 22 days, 24 days or something? That gets really expensive.
That was expensive. Yeah. That was really expensive. But I usually start at day 7, and then based on what that progesterone says, then I'll either wait a few more days or start doing it every other day.
That's what happened to me with the big expensive one. I had one that didn't ovulate till almost 30 days, and I was back and back and back. And when all of this testing started, we had the kits that we used to use before we sent out the blood. And after that happened to me, I kind of rethought the situation, and now I'm using the target test, and I use that at home myself. I bought a used centrifuge, and I run that, and when that color starts to change, then I go in and do a regular progesterone test at the vet. It's saved me a significant amount of money.
I find it really interesting that across the country, the different prices that vets are charging for progesterone. It is really, someone's making a lot of money, because they usually double the price with the lab price. And I can remember when it was $50, and the last one was $179. It wasn't my vet, it was minimum, but I was paying it, so. You should move where you live. It varies.
Talk to them.
It's very expensive.
Well,
But it works. It works.
The home target tests are, I think, $115 for 12 tests. So if you monitor the rise of progesterone, the home target test, and then as Sue says, when it's getting close, you can really get a real number for your $135. It really helps a lot to do it that way.
Heard the veterinarians have heard about gasoline prices. We have a question right back here.
I'll wait, I won't.
I'll never live this down.
Neither will I. Do you find that bitches tend to keep with the same ovulation dates? No. That's not the answer that I want.
Every season can be different. Every progesterone test can be different on the same, it just doesn't work. You just have to do the duty and go through the whole thing. Because they're always changing the rules on us, the girls. Always.
They don't read the books.
One of the reasons that,
Anyway,
anyway, one of the reasons that I mean, I could probably do breedings just using the target test. If I'm breeding to a dog that I can use, if it's my own dog and I have him there and I can use him to cover really well and breed often. It's better for timing if you have to go somewhere and you're limited in the amount of breedings you can do. I also use that to time a section on the other end. I don't do the progesterone on the other end for section timing. Dr. Hutchinson spoke about using the number 5 and that they will welt from when they were at 5 in the season. And I found that to be very true, and I use that for timing a section also.
Whichever end of the room I go to, the question comes from the other end.
I'm Cindy Flowers, Old Bay, Newfoundland. My question is, fresh, chilled, frozen, progesterone numbers from the time of what do you look for each of those situations from when you would do a breeding? Do you understand my question?
Me?
No. So you're doing a fresh or a chilled or a frozen. You hit 5. When do you do your breeding? And what would you do in each of those circumstances as far as, well, frozen, surgical?
Okay, I think we got it.
I understand.
On the fresh chilled, if I'm going to do 2 breedings or ask for 2 shipments, I would wait till 5 and then I would breed 2 days later and 2 days after that. On frozen, I think you wait a little bit longer and you check the progesterone almost every 12 to 24 hours to make sure it's staying at a certain point, and probably breed 3 days later or even 4 days later if you're going to do frozen. And as far as frozen, if you're not going to do a surgical implant, I think you're wasting a lot of frozen semen because it only lasts 12 hours at best, and you've really got to have your window pretty close tight to get in there and get a litter out of it. It's getting better, but I think that most of the repros want to do a lot of progesterone near the end, once it hits 5. I think that Bill wants it to hit 7, right? 5. Did that answer everything, Cindy?
I think so. So if you were doing fresh, you would breed on which days? If you had 2 breedings?
2 days after they turn 5.
Okay.
Or, you know, if you're at
Even
4.5 or 4.7, consider it 5 and breed 2 days later, and then 2 days after that.
Yeah. And frozen approximately 3 to 4 days.
And the repro vet that's going to put the sperm in surgically, they'll kind of monitor it and have you do more progesterone tests than you ever wanted to do if you want to use frozen.
As I understand it, they ovulate at 5, and I find that to be pretty true. It takes, you know, it's of course not precise, but it takes between 24 and 36 hours for the eggs to be totally released, and then they need to ripen, and then you have time for the sperm to reach the egg, and when the egg can be fertilized. So, depending on whether you're doing, you know, an implant, do an implant, sperm is right where it needs to be immediately. But if you're doing an artificial, it takes a while for the sperm to get there, and some are dying off, and there's a resting phase for the egg, and there's a resting phase for the sperm, where the sperm crawl into the fallopian tube and take a nap. And so, you know, and most of the written material, once you compile it all, actually kind of agrees. If you read it separately, not on the same day, it's a bit confusing, but if you put it all together, it's pretty clear. So, and then you ask the vet, because he's the one who's going to do it.
And if you really want to have puppies, you should try another breed. Because when you breed a Newfoundland, you have a better chance of having puppies than if you don't breed them. But if you breed them, probably 2 days after 5, you're going to have puppies. It's not just terriers. I'm sure porties. They have puppies. Breed them, you end up and look at each other.
They look at each other in Portuguese and that's it.
I use a vet that's a boxer breeder, and until he actually started breeding his boxers and having problems, he kind of like blew me off on some things. But once he started having problems, he just like really got interested in all of this. And one of the things, he works also very closely with Dr. Hutchinson, and he has found that one of the reasons you have to continue to do them, Newfoundlands being a prime breed, that their progesterones will start spiking and then it will go down again. So particularly with frozen, you have to be right on the money for that. And that's one of the reasons that they want to keep doing it.
Robert, what number does he want frozen?
Yeah, exactly.
5 and then 3 days later. He thinks 3 days later is the optimum. If you're going to do more than one breeding, as Peggy said, you would do it 2 and then 2 days later, 2 days later, and then 2 days later again.
Progesterone levels after 5, according to it doesn't really matter. It's really immaterial. It's always the amount of time. So if you do a progesterone level and after 5, you might as well not bother. Because it doesn't matter. That's how I understand it.
It matters if they go down, because it needs to go up to 10 nanograms or whatever to hold a pregnancy. If it doesn't go up to 10, you're not going to get a pregnancy out of it. So you have to have it go up. It usually goes up a couple days later if they're up to 15 or 20.
I can speak loud enough. Would it ever go too high for you to say it's too late? You know, when do you say that number gets too late?
It depends on how you've checked all the way up the line. I mean, if you hit 5 and 2 days later you check the progesterone and it's 25, you're definitely not too late.
Okay.
And it can go up pretty high.
Yeah.
And it can get scary, but if your first progesterone is at 25, you don't have a baseline. And you're taking a gamble that it just might be too late.
Right.
It's not guaranteed that it is, but probably. And then you have other factors of how's the dog acting, how's the bitch acting. You know, that could give you a little hint that maybe you're still okay. But if that's your first progesterone test, I would wait till the next season myself, because it's kind of lacking in information.
Hi, my name is Jen Van Pola. I read an article recently that, you know, in choosing the stud dog, they found that you could look for the best stud dog, and he's a great winning dog, but he didn't reproduce the same thing. But his daughters did. Do you find that in our breed? That sometimes he didn't reproduce that same winning dog, but they were finding his daughters then did.
I think it's a very big possibility that could happen. And then you can also have a stud dog that produces himself right up front. You know, I think it varies, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
And the grandparents are always a nice indication when you're breeding. We always look very, very strongly at the 4 grandparents.
Somebody had a question. Right, the lady in the white hat.
Well, about the progesterone test. When I read it, when I bred at 5 or a couple days after, never had puppies. Never. My progesterone results are way high when I do a breeding. And I find it's the rate of the rise from the previous test. And I've had bitches in the 20s, close to 30s, high teens, and I'll still wait 2 days, breed them, and I get litters of puppies. But I just, and I have found an article, a very interesting article, by someone who disputes Dr. Hutchinson's theory on all bitches ovulate at 5. He said it actually is the rate of the rise. And obviously you want to check them, and somebody else was just saying here, you know, the day they're bred, you check them just to make sure that they're high. Because even when you've got progesterone tests around 5, they can go backwards. So, you know, it is important to keep following up and checking to make sure they're real high.
Hi, I'm here for Dagmar Melchicka from Missouri, Mississippi Canal, and she would like to ask if you give some medicament to the bitches when they are already pregnant and not to lose the puppies. Because it happened to her before that she got a checking after 28 days. The test showed the bitch is pregnant, but no puppies after that.
Progesterone test after 28 days.
Yeah.
Progesterone test after 28 days. Oh.
Did the progesterone drop?
Oh, medication. Medication?
To give progesterone to a bitch that's
Right.
reabsorbing a litter or something like that? Is that what you mean?
If you give them any medication,
If their progesterone starts to drop when they're pregnant, and that's the reason why they're starting to lose puppies, you want to know if we would give progesterone to the bitch?
if there's something
No.
you can give them.
Any minute.
Once they're confirmed pregnant after 28 days, you give medication from that point on to hold you right into the reabsorb.
But what they're saying up here is in translating, if they get to 28 days and you're concerned about holding the litter, is there anything that you give them in terms of medical treatment to try to hold the litter?
Well, you could give progesterone if that was the reason, but if you're worried about something, you need to know what you're worried about before you start treating. I don't think we're understanding what you want.
I think I understood. I think she's talking about she had a bitch reabsorb a litter, and is there anything we do to prevent that from happening? I know Sussex are big reabsorbers, and those breeders tend to monitor the progesterone through the entire pregnancy, and they will supplement with progesterone shots if it starts to drop. I've not heard of Newfoundland people doing it. I've never monitored a pregnancy like that.
We did with one Portuguese water dog, and the progesterone went down and she lost a couple of puppies, and there were still some puppies in there on an ultrasound. We gave progesterone shots to the female, and she held 2 puppies. And she had them normally, but it was very bizarre because one of the puppies was normal. The other puppy had a vulva and a penis. And that is what you run the risk when you give these hormones. You can become too doggy. Bitches can become too doggy. They can have both sexual organs. Some bitches have heads like males, which sometimes that would be okay. But there is some danger in that also. And I was shocked by what came out of those 2 puppies. It wasn't worth really saving it because there were problems.
Amy Lane, Allegiance, Newfoundland. So if you were to have a bitch that was losing their puppies, their progesterone drops, and they were reabsorbing the litter, would you discontinue using that female in your breeding program? If you had to end up supplementing the progesterone to keep the litter each time?
Based on my one experience, yes.
Based on mine, I had a bitch that was about 12 days before she was due, and her temperature dropped, and she was cold, and she was down to 97. And since I heard of others litters saved with progesterone, I tested, and it was maybe 4.5, 5, and we added progesterone, and my vet got online with all the other. He's not a specialist, but he got online, and they all chipped in and told him how much we needed, and saved the litter. And yes, I bred the bitch, and it was fine. Bred the bitch again, and didn't need it. Checked it once, didn't need it. I had a bitch that I bred. Need you.
I had a bitch that I bred several years ago, and she did start resorbing her puppies. We supplemented the progesterone. Bred her again a year later. I was clued into what might have been happening, so I did start testing her as it got closer. She dropped her progesterone again. I had to supplement her again. Then the puppy I kept out of her, did the same thing. They're both spayed.
What about motility in the stud dog? When you're looking to ship the dog,
what motility do you expect from frozen semen, from fresh chilled, as somebody who receives the semen before you inseminate?
On frozen, it would be the reproductive vet that would determine that and send a report with the frozen semen of what they had. If you go there to do a fresh chilled and they collect, they do the same thing. They'll list the amount of semen, the motility, the abnormalities. If you collect yourself and look under a mic and then ship it, you know, you're not doing the same thing as a repro vet would do, but you can see that there's good sperm quality there and ship it off, and it's worked well for us.
But there's no certain percentage that you would expect?
In a dog that's, say, between 2 and 6 or 7, you don't want to see more than 18% abnormalities. In an older dog, you might see 20, 25, and that's why they want you to freeze them before they're 6 or 7 years old. And but on the frozen, it's really, I don't even know, do they defrost a little bit of it before they ship it?
They do.
Yeah, so you're getting a report then, that's where it comes from. And also a report when they collected it, how the dog froze.
Right.
That usually accompanies the frozen semen.
It's just that I've heard varying numbers in terms of, say my repro vet will say, oh, 60%, that's great on a frozen.
Right.
And other people say, oh, no, that's terrible. So I was just wondering if you had...
I think 60% is pretty darn good on frozen semen.
Frozen is really
On fresh chilled, it should be much higher than that.
We recently got 2 puppies with 45%. Shipped at 55, dropped to 45%, and that was not an implant, that was just a normal artificial. So we were happy with 2 puppies. Expect 59.
Lynn.
Kathy McIver has a question. When you bred a bitch and you're going to do an ultrasound, is there any concerns about palpations or ultrasounds damaging the puppies in utero? And the other question would be, what kind of restrictions do you put on a bitch after you breed her? You can see, you know, do you not swim her? We hear, oh, you shouldn't take a bitch after she's bred and put her in ponds and things like that. Do you have any specific restrictions, things that you don't like to expose her to maybe make it a little safer for the pregnancy?
The first 10 days after I do a breeding, I keep them relatively quiet, which is they run in the field and stuff, but not banging around with other dogs, because it takes about 10 days for those little eggs to attach and find their place in the uterus wall. After that, they resume normal activity, other than going out with 10 of them and bashing around. I try to keep that at bay a little bit. But they normally do everything. I try not to think about taking them to a dog show. I think that's time to stay at home and keep things under control with the bugs that go around, the little viruses when you go in, especially the indoor shows. But other than that, pretty much the same routine.
I would keep them somewhat restricted until they closed up, but I resumed normal activities, and my dog's normal activities are pretty normal. I remember jumping dogs up to 5 weeks, and they had 10 puppies. And they didn't look pregnant, and we didn't have ultrasound back then, and they were fine. But they tell women to do normal activities, and so dogs are fine. And all those mutts running around to get pregnant, don't stop doing normal things.
Okay, we have some lovely goodies back there, chocolate chip cookies, etc. One of the 3 basic food groups, and there's coffee. And so let's give you a chance to talk among each other, questions that you may be thinking about or that you may come up with, and give your chance, get yourself a cup of coffee or a glass of water, and let's come back in about 10 minutes for another 20 minutes. Okay? Thank you all so much. Thank you, panel, and we'll be right back to you.
Nancy Bynes. My question actually to all of you is, do you have some kind of a mental formula or a checklist that you use, some kind of a formula that you use when you start playing the dating game, newlywed game, when you're matching pedigrees, and what is it that you're looking for? And do you have any kind of criteria that ultimately is the same for every litter that you hope to produce? Does that make sense? What's your secret?
Very simply, you're trying to get good type and along with good health. And we definitely have been getting healthier dogs because we've been working on it for a long time. Certainly not. I thought the hearts would never get better, but we're certainly having less hearts show up in litters, so it has paid off. And particularly since we've started checking adults, but you have to have a goal and know what you like, what's correct, whether you like it or not.
I think you also have to know your bitch and study her, not only her, but her pedigree, and learn as much as you can about what's behind her, because a lot of what she'll produce is actually back there, maybe not necessarily showing in her. And then when you realize what you need to improve, you have to seek a pedigree that's good for producing that. Also, you have to maintain an ideal of what you want and try and work for that at all times. But I think knowing as much as you can about what's in the pedigrees, not just the dogs themselves. My early mentor taught me tons of things about dogs that were dead and pedigrees of hers. And it was very helpful in trying to make decisions and saying, oh gee, this one's grandfather looked like that, or this one's grandfather had that problem, and I'm seeing it here, and how do I get rid of it? And just as much information as you can gain, and really knowing your animal and what really needs to be worked on.
Kathleen McIver. Have any of you treated a bitch with prostaglandins, and how has that been effective for you?
I used it one time and it was not effective at all. It made the bitch sick. And it's a very strong hormone, I think.
I don't know. It causes the uterus to contract and get rid of all the stuff that's in it.
In there comes.
It's a pretty rough treatment.
It's a purge.
Yeah, it purges the uterus, basically.
But it can, sometimes the first couple are really tough. They vomit, they shake, they do all kinds of things. But it does clear the uterus out. There's no question about it. But are you going to have a pregnancy from it? No. I think Sue just has good fortune.
I just had it.
I don't know if that many people that have had such fortune, or even tried it.
Yeah, I think I had a little rush of pios, and I started to panic about it, and I spayed 3 bitches with pios, and another one pioed after having one litter of 12, and on her next season she pioed, and I said enough is enough. And I have a vet that's worked a lot with prostaglandins, and I called him up, and we treated her. It's a rough treatment. They have to have shots for several days, and you can help with a lot of the side effects by just moving them for about a half an hour. You just run them around and keep them moving, and that seems to help with that. And then you have to breed them right at the next season for sure. But I have a bitch too this week that's got a good healthy litter in it that we did treat with prostaglandins.
Didn't work for me.
I did it once and I watched the bitch and I could never do it again, just to the bitch. But I'm wondering, can I ask you, Sue, when did you do it? Did you do it when she came in season, or when did you use it?
When she was pilot. When we found the pio. was when we treated it.
So it was following another season.
It was about 4 weeks after. Yep.
Another way they use prostaglandin, which I think is very helpful, if a bitch is in a full-blown PIO, before they'll actually do the surgery on this gigundo 5-pound uterus, they'll purge it to get it out of there to make the surgery less dangerous to the inside stomach wall and stuff. And flush it out first, and then they take out a lot smaller uterus and not so friable. I mean, it's paper thin and it's full of pus, and it's a risky surgery trying to get something like that out. They carry it out with kid gloves, and with the prostaglandin, it will purge some of that out. And they're sick anyway with the PIO, so it doesn't seem quite as hard to do for me anyway.
I've got one over here.
Marie Tumlin, Checkered Flags. When you go through the PIO, I've had a bitch PIO, treated her, and had 2 successful litters without any relapse with it. Do you find that by chance any of the offspring from these might have problems also?
This is the first time I've done it and have success, so those puppies aren't born yet to know whether or not any of them would go on to PIO. I don't know.
14 months old, but so far everybody's gone through their first cycle with no problems. But the bitch had PIO, we treated her, it was open, and I had 2 successful litters after that with the breeding a year apart and no relapse of PIO in between. But I really knew what to look for.
I'll get there, Pam.
Let's find out somebody else.
Yeah, I'm on my way around.
Cindy Flowers, Old Bay. Change the subject slightly. We're here at a national. You've been to many nationals for a long time. I'd like to know what you think from your past history of looking at the strengths and weaknesses that you're seeing in our dogs, and what you would like to see us improve, and in our breeding programs, what direction then you would take in order to make those improvements. That's a difficult question, I think.
Got several parts there.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. So let's start off with the first question with, over the years of the nationals that you've been to, you see several hundreds of dogs. Strengths and weaknesses that you're seeing today. Strengths and weaknesses, not just one or the other, both together. What are you seeing today first as a breed in the Newfoundlands? Conformation, temperament.
Sorry. I want to say that having been around with Newfoundland since 1963, I have seen radical changes in the breed since then. I've seen, it starts with breeders or people involved in the breed that first develop a picture in their mind of the kind of, the structure and type of a Newfoundland that they think is the kind of dog that a Newfoundland should be. And then they work toward that goal. And during this route, rears get better, and then they get worse. And fronts get better, and then they get worse. And top lines go all to hell, and then they come back. So it's an ebb and flow, but it takes the basics, as far as I'm concerned, is it takes good people with a good picture in their mind and an ability to figure out how to get there. It always involves the mental picture of the correct dog.
is going to nationals, so you actually see the dogs. So it's not just the win pictures you see, the records. I'm quite amazed sometimes when people buy a dog from me and they've never had a Newfoundland and they can recite pedigrees of 20 many generations, and they've never seen the dogs and they really don't know anything. Just because they want them doesn't mean anything at all. So come to the specialties and see them and listen and look at health also. But I think we've definitely, my goodness, our dogs don't look like they used to look like. Oh, they were straight in the rear, they were wide in the front, out of the elbows, long and low, as they still are, but quite a different dog. Peggy got a hold of a number of pictures of animals we thought a kennel was great. And when you looked at these, after this person had died, and it was like 30 years later, we couldn't believe that these were the dogs we thought were so wonderful. Maybe they were the best. They were the best.
They might have done the best at the time, but in today's world, not so good.
And in the 60s, you couldn't find a sound dog to breed to.
Yeah.
So it was almost like no place to start.
They didn't have an OFA.
So that doesn't indicate.
No, but what they did, and if you had a champion that had an OFA number, I mean, it was, everyone had to breed to it, but nothing. I mean, it was unbelievable. I can remember the first 3 or 4. They were so unusual that, I mean, they were good, but if they were a champion, it was just most unusual. And Kenny Drury used to say they were not Newfoundlands if they had good hips. She told me that.
I've heard her say that.
I don't need, I really don't need.
Okay, I'll use mine.
Might do you?
So just a little bit more, 'cause I'm always just a little bit more. Today, where do you want to see us go? Like, what is the improvements that you, overall, in general, looking out and seeing in the ring, the dogs, so we see some that were just like, overall in our breed, what do we need to improve? Where are we today? Where do we need to go?
I'll take a little stab at this question. Certainly, when you see a class of Newfoundlands today in a ring, like 25 of them that we were watching today's different classes were good-sized numbers. Basically, 90% of them, when the judge says, take them around, they get up and go. And this wasn't always the case years ago. They tried to go, but they didn't really go. And while they're going, you might say, oh, that one lacks a little front reach, that one lacks a little drive, but basically, they go. I think that mental picture that Ann talks about has developed into a better looking breed, and certainly a healthier and sounder breed. But there's a lot of pieces that aren't in harmony when I look at some of the dogs. And there lacks the balance. The heads are all different to me. You can't look in a ring and see one head that basically looks like another. I think we could work to make a more standardized head, although when you read the standard, most of these heads would pass mustard on the standard. My thing that I'm seeing a lot of that I don't even know what to do about it, there's so much of it, are these croups that are very long and very sloping, and when they start to take off, they're going, they're reaching and they're driving, and there's a middle piece in there that's rocking and rolling everywhere. And I think that's pretty faulty for the breed right now, and I think we need to work on them, and I don't think we've really ever addressed that. It's always been coming, going, head, bone. But I saw a lot of bad croups in the last couple of days, and I think we could work there. But generally speaking, it's a pleasure, as a judge also, to see a group of dogs go around the ring. I mean, it's really, really nice. Our fronts are still little straight in the upper arm, should be laid back a little bit more. The rears, I think, sometimes are a little more angled than they need. And I saw a lot of that today. A lot of dogs that are going around on their hocks, a little too much angle and bend to the stifle. But they're minor details as what we used to see. I mean, straight stifles, like they couldn't even push their rear off their rears at all. So I think we're headed in a good direction, but I think that you have to, I don't see clear definition in any one breeder's mind. You can have it, but you got to try to produce it. You've got to take those faults or virtues and, you know, put them to use on a piece of paper, look at the pedigree, troubleshoot it for health, and look 3 different ways. Say, I can breed this bitch 3 different ways, and then just keep narrowing it down and look at the siblings of your bitch too, if you can, you know, pull that out, and just try to get a real clear idea. And if it doesn't cut the mustard, don't just breed it because it's in your kennel. Try to improve, and each generation, if the daughter's not as good as the mother or grandmother, you might want to move it on and try again. Do a little sacrificing along the way, because as hard as that is, because you're raising a Newfoundland and getting all the health clearances is difficult, but you really have to start being a little fussier about what you put in the whelping box and what stud dogs you use. And some of the top winning stud dogs are great to use. They're great dogs. But there are other dogs out there too. Take a good look. Spend some time off the computer and get your hands on some of these dogs. A lot of things are done with this internet, which are great, but there's no substitute for actually going up and going over them. And you're here, you should go over any dog that you see that you like and put that in your mental bank to move forward. That dog and his brother has a really good croup, and I've been having trouble with croups. I'm going to do some investigating. You know, start really communicating with each other. And I think you'll move it even further than we've moved it from 35 years ago. It's a very well-respected breed in the working group. And it wasn't always that way. So I think we should be very proud of where we've come, but we've got a hell of a lot of work to do to keep there and improve it yet another step.
Thank you.
You spoke about short cycling bitches. What about long cycling bitches?
Somebody had one.
I have 3 of them now. 2 of them finally came in season and got pregnant. I've got one that's sitting out there at over 9 months. She had a litter of puppies 9 months ago and hasn't come in yet.
That's probably normal for her, and it's better than coming in every 3 or 4 months. So I think it's great. I'd like them to come in once every 9 months to keep everything in order. And I don't consider it a problem if she's having puppies. It's not a problem for her. It's who she is. And if you weren't having puppies or something, maybe there is a problem with that. But I don't. I think short cycling is where you have the problem. The uterine wall sloughs off, you have a season, and then it doesn't have time to repair itself to receive a pregnancy. And the long cycles, I think once a year would be fine. I've heard a lot of people have bitches come in once a year, always have a litter. If they always have a litter and they're reproductively sound, don't fight it. Sounds good to me.
Let us know what those puppies are.
Yeah,
One will C-section tomorrow.
I'm Lori Littleford. I'd like to, we've had a lot of questions on the science of breeding, and I think the wealth of information here is also in the art, because I think we've got 5 people that have done it really, really well. So I guess my question would be, what has surprised you in terms of faults that was easy to get rid of, and what was exceptionally hard?
I'll start when I first had mine. It was very easy to learn heads, and I knew what kind of head I liked, but I didn't know much about structure. And certainly the dog is a lot more than its head, and I think a head can be put on much more easily than restructure. You know, it's certainly more than a pretty face. You know,
light eyes, and you can correct some of those things much more easily than shoulders or rear ends.
I think one of the most difficult things is front ends. Rears to me are fairly simple. You know, you can tell a bad croup, a long sloping croup, a short steep croup, a bad tail set, you know, angle, length of hock, that's all pretty easy. Front ends are really hard. And because you have to understand how the front and rear work together. And so you may look at a front and think, oh, that's a gorgeous front. But how that rear plays into helping that front be good may be something to look at. It's probably more often that a good rear makes a front bad or appear bad. Dogs can have nice, solid top lines, and if there's an imbalance in front and rear, the top line's gone. So you can have a good back and a bad top line. Top line to me is when they're gaiting, you know. Back is when they're standing. So I think fronts are amazing. And how you improve a front, you say, well, my bitch has a bad front. Well, why does she have a bad front? What is making her front bad? It's not as simple as just picking that dog that seems to appear to have a good front. Because you may indeed be combining things which will give you messier fronts. So understanding fronts is really hard for me. I don't understand.
I think it's the hardest thing to understand. And that's why I think most every breed that exists in the purebred system, fronts are the big problem. Because it's a complex, where it's set on the shoulder, where it's set on the rib cage, the upper arm length as opposed to the shoulder. And it's a very complex group of things that go on to make a good or bad front. And I guess we're not alone in this, because every breed that you see in a ring today, they have the same issues and they talk about the same things at seminars. You know, we need to improve our fronts. So it's good study of the front end and go over dogs, feel them. You'd be surprised sometimes. You think, oh, look at that beautiful lay back of shoulder, and you get there and it's up around here, you know, instead. So put your hands on them, especially our breed with all the hair they have. So I think Dan's right about the fronts being the most complex thing we have to deal with, and that's why I think it's harder to fix something you can't understand.
Okay, everybody, we've had a great number of questions. What I'd like to do now is to go down the panel one at a time and give you a chance to impart one little piece of wisdom that you might tell a new breeder, something that you could say, something that's your little specialty that you might say to this group that would help them. Robin?
I think the thing that I would say is what's kind of been repeated here the most is to research this breed, to watch this breed, to get a mental image in your mind of what your perception of it is, and to learn about it. Look through old Newfoundlands, look through old specialty tapes, get a mentor, and feel the dogs look at the dogs, touch the dogs that you like. That's the best thing I would say.
Suzanne?
Probably have to pretty much reiterate that and what I said before about studying pedigrees, learning as much as you can, developing a picture of the standard in your mind's eye and setting that as a goal. And you have to be a little masochistic, because it's not easy. You get a lot of defeats along the way, but if you really love the breed and you want to do it, this is the best. It's an addiction. But we love the breed. We're working to try and preserve the breed, and I think just studying as much as you can and sticking with it, and absolutely getting your hands on as many dogs as you can, and not just looking at pictures.
Peggy?
I think most important thing is to never stop learning. To get out there and continue to learn, sit at the ring, don't gab with your neighbor, look at what's in the ring and see if you can make little notes next to your catalog. And then I found years ago we had groups of people, they all had different breeds, and we used to have once a month a study group. And we'd all sit down and chew the fat and what's going on in German Shepherds, what's going on in Poodles, Newfoundlands, Siberian Huskies, and sit down and talk to other people. Communication between breeders is about the most beneficial thing you can ever do. Talk to people. Don't be afraid to go up and talk. I mean, just the people sitting up here, I can tell you, people, oh, I can't possibly ask Sue Jones about that. You can ask her. You might not like what she has to say, but you can ask her. Don't be afraid to approach the people who have done this duty a long time, because we've all exchanged information through the years freely and honestly, and by gosh, be honest about what you've got in the backyard to yourself and to anybody who asks, and you'll never have to worry about what you say.
Ann, you saw a whole bunch of dogs today.
I did. Nice ones too. I think that sometimes we bring our focus down a little too narrow. As we all, I started that way too. I wanted mostly what I had in my backyard. I have a greater dedication, and that's the breed. As I see things become troublesome in the breed, I care more about the breed and less about my own backyard. So keep an eye on the bigger picture.
Hey, you saw a bunch of dogs today too.
I did.
The top ones.
And I wish I had them all, but I wouldn't want to take care of them all. And that's kind of my problem, and I think I've solved it, is I have a problem is that I keep my dogs and train them, and they're my pets, and I just can't move them out once I've decided that they're mine. So I kept the number small, and but I do see a lot of people that have just way too many dogs, and those dogs would be better elsewhere, or just don't keep any more. Or if you have to breed, just don't keep them all. But realize your own limits and what they are, and don't have more than you can take care of. When you can't pick them up anymore, then go smaller.
Pat, you coming up one more time? I have a box here. This is for a $25 gift certificate, number 350136. One happy woman. Okay, she's coming up. I want to thank you all so much for coming tonight. I want to thank each of our panel members, people who have been so dedicated to our breed. And produced dogs that each of us have adored and admired, and been so thankful to have the opportunity, as we do at a session like this week, of seeing those dogs. I know as a breed judge, quite often I go in the ring to judge and I don't see dogs, Newfoundlands, like I see here today. I was thinking, what would I'd probably have a heart attack as a breed judge if I were to go into a ring and see that top 20 that Betty got to see today. I mean, it would be just such a shock to see that. And you come here and you know there really is hope for doing it right. And coming to a session like this, I hope will allow you to think about in your breeding program doing it right, thinking about what we want this breed to be, the health that we want, the quality that we want. And thank you so much for being here tonight and being a part of this. Go home and enjoy your Newfoundlands as the year comes by. They're sometimes with us all too short a time, but every day is such an honor to live with such a breed. Thank you very much.